What's up, fanboys and fangirls? Welcome to another Reviewpoint podcast coming to you from fanboysanonymous.com. We're doing more of these because things are happening. Movies are, releasing here and there. It feels weird after so many months, but
it's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm enjoying being able to enjoy things.
Yes, it's like you're enjoying life.
Yeah, which this one's going to be all about. I'm your host, as always, Tony Mango. Joining me for this is Robert D. Felice.
Howdy, Tony. It is a quarter after 2 a.m. and we're going to talk about life.
It's 2 a.m. on January 2nd, which, of course, if you're wrapped up in the whole, 2020 is over and 2021, let's try to make it a good year, and it's New Year's, and it's whatever, and then you decide that you're going to watch a movie like Soul, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to fight back some tears a little bit,
Yeah, this was a very emotional movie. I watched it on Christmas. You just got finished watching it now. It's a beautiful movie. That's right off the bat. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie.
Yeah, bury the lead here. Really big fan of that about this movie. So if you're expecting us to trash it, not going to happen. This is going to be one of the most positive reviews that we put out for a while, especially after Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman 1984. Not the biggest fan of that one. But
these were released on the same day, and there's such a clear difference in quality.
Yeah, there really is. For that matter, I'll say it, this is a lot better than Onward.
Yeah, Onward's gonna end up being one of the redheaded stepchildren of Pixar. I liked it, but this movie blows it away.
So, just to get some housekeeping out of the way, is that the word I want to use? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, I don't know.
Callum says admin when he hosts.
What do you mean?
Like, that's the word he uses instead of housekeeping.
For plugs and everything?
Yeah, get some admin out of
the way. Get some cleaning up raking the leaves in the yard, or maybe I'll start getting into some other analogies here. Just some plugs to get you out of that, where you don't have to hear that later on when we get deeper into this movie. Obviously, if you are listening to us on any platform outside of YouTube, follow us or like us or whatever on those. But if you're on YouTube, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done that already. Ring that little notification bell. Show your support in any kind of way that you can, including leaving a comment below and telling us what you think about the movie. So we want to know what you have to say, just, not just what we have to say about things. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Check out all the stuff that's happening on fanboysanonymous.com. Check out the merchandise shops, TeePublic and Redbubble. And if you want us to do more of these kind of things, hit up the Patreon, patreon.com/fanboysanonymous. Not a whole lot of plugs to talk about just because I want to get into this. So I didn't know too much about this movie ahead of time. This was one of those movies that I completely slept on for the year. Earlier this year, because I haven't been doing the 6 Flicks picks. For anybody who doesn't know, 6 Flicks picks is something that I've been doing for a couple of years now. Time flies. Where every month I'll look at the movies that are going to be coming out, and I'll write down the 6 Flicks picks. That's kind of the point. The 6 movies that I would pick if I was told that I both only can see 6 movies, or in some cases have to see 6 movies. So sometimes there are no films in a particular month that I feel like watching, and I gotta pick with if I had to, gun to my head, I gotta watch 6 movies. Which ones would they be? And some other times it'll be like May or June, where there's an onslaught of films coming out, and I'll be like, oh my god, I can't pick only 6 out of these because there's 15, and then that makes that difficult, whatever. Without having movies come out this year the way that they normally do, I've just lost track of movies that were supposed to come out, and a movie like Soul would be that type of a movie that wouldn't really be on my radar to begin with at the beginning of the year, because usually at the beginning of the year I do one general, every movie is coming out, which 6 would I do? Which, if you're interested, check it out on the website. I did that for 2021. Soul was not on the 2020 list as far as man, I can't wait to see this. And I had 20-something movies listed down just because I didn't even know that it really was a thing. I knew Onward was coming out, and I know that by now Pixar makes quality content, and even their bad movies that I've seen haven't been bad. I haven't seen all of them, but The Good Dinosaur, I wasn't really a big fan of it. but it wasn't a bad movie. It was just sort of like, that's not Toy Story. You know?
People really define The Good Dinosaur as like the beginning of a decline. And I'm like, if The Good Dinosaur is your benchmark of bad, you're doing pretty good.
Yeah, Pixar overall, like, they might whiff a couple, but they're still going to get on the base. So
Absolutely.
there's uh like not much that I had going into Soul, where I didn't know really the plot. I didn't know anything about the film. I didn't know who was in it. I just knew that it was a cute Pixar movie, I'm assuming. And then I've seen a couple things here and there, and then you said that you had watched it and that it was really good. And Caroline and I just got done watching it not that long ago, about an hour ago, and we both were just like, "Wow, this is really good." She actually,
Did she cry? Did she like
she came
forego
close.
tears? Like,
She, at the very beginning of the movie, about maybe like 2 minutes in, she was like, "I already can tell that I'm gonna like this movie. I'm catching myself smiling," and I'm like, "Okay, that's a good start." And from pretty much the start to the end, this was just a good movie.
a very good movie. It's a movie that even if you can look at the trailer and understand the premise and the moral, you should sit through the whole movie because it will take you on the emotional journey that you expect from Pixar. The world is beautiful. The world is beautifully drawn, especially like the soul realm or like the beyond. The gorgeous. And I can't say enough good things about this movie.
Yeah, if we're talking like animation, for instance, she pointed out something that I didn't actually even notice, which was the Dorothea character. Her hair, the way that it was bouncing, so
Yeah.
well done. Like, that had just enough of a bounce to it that you could tell that it was the way that hair would move. Like, it's not moving because they're moving it. It felt like it had like a built-in engine that was just sort of like, well, that's the natural physics of it. Everything looked that sort of hyper realistic way that they do things, where you can tell it's not obviously real. It's not supposed to be, but it's just that next stage beyond even something like Inside Out. Like, this was crisper, and the skin tones of the characters were really great. Nobody looked like they were made out of like pudding or like clay. You know how like the old claymation used to be back,
Yeah.
way, way, way long ago, where it's like everybody felt like looked like kind of rubbery, and you could tell like where the joints were. Didn't seem
If
like it.
if you watch, I believe it was the 2001 released Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius to today, like the animation has improved so much, and I I feel like Pixar really came into this movie looking to create a specific story, and they were able to tell that story very well, and I think invite in a certain segment of the audience without alienating anybody.
Yeah, I mean, look at it this way. I am a white guy. This didn't approach itself as like a movie for anybody in particular, but I did think leading into this, I was like, oh, this is a movie about jazz. I don't like jazz, really. It's not like my thing. I have a certain appreciation for anything where I can tell if somebody's really passionate about something, then it's like, oh, that's cool. But like, to me, I don't like sitting down and listening to jazz. I think it's just kind of like noisy and, whatever. So I thought that the movie was about somebody discovering their passion for jazz. And I was like, I'm not really going to get into that. Like, that just doesn't speak to me. And then seeing that it was a movie that's predominantly most of the characters are African American, I was like, okay, well, maybe there's going to be a disconnect at some point, but that's totally fine. Not every movie has to be for me or anybody in particular. And at no point in this movie did I feel like this wasn't an inviting type of thing that anybody could connect with. Like, even the fact that the jazz thing, it's like it could have replaced that with almost anything else, and I don't think that it would have changed anything, although it works really well in the movie as far as like metaphor and everything.
I do think it was important, like the way that they captured Black culture. Again,
Hmm.
not the right person to talk about it, but from the outside looking in, it seems like they not only did it justice, but they did it in a way that these mediums sometimes don't. And it felt very connected to that world while still, again, just being this important story. And here's the beautiful thing: 2020 was a dumpster fire, right?
Mm.
And the themes of this movie, and even the fact that it's rooted in Black culture, you would think, oh, it was playing off the back of 2020 itself. No, obviously not. Soul was done and in the can and ready
Yeah.
to go. And it just adds to, in a positive way, adds to what 2020 was and what 2020 will stand for going forward.
It really seems almost like if they couldn't have planned this better, it was the type of movie that comes off as a response to the issues of 2020. Like, it's an inviting movie for people of different races, not just speaking to one ethnicity. And that was, of course, a big thing with 2020, which is, this racial divide. And some people that for some reason still have this issue of like people should, different people should be whatever. So I don't know. But we can get into a whole discussion about how stupid some people are. But, like I think like watching a movie like this, if you're a little kid, I'd imagine this is one of those types of movies that helps define how you approach the world. Like,
Yes.
if you were to watch this as a little kid, there's no point in this movie where it becomes anything about race. It's just, hey, these are people. And that's exactly what it should be with everybody. Everybody's just people. So it's like, that feels great because I'm sure that so many people can watch this movie and they'll just be like, oh, Joe, yeah, he's a jazz musician, instead of he's a black man who whatever and blah, blah, blah. Like Morgan Freeman's talked about in the past. He's like, just, I'm Morgan Freeman. Like, just, kind of like stop defining me by all these other stereotypes and whatever. They didn't do stereotypes in this in a way that was like, here's this type of character and here's whatever. It's just people. And then you get like, the other response of 2020 of how terrible this year was for like selfishness and death and like how terrible every day is. Like you wake up and you're just like, oh, I'm glad that I'm still here, but oh God, I gotta wake up, like that kind of thing. And
And
one of
I
the
think,
overall themes of this one is just like, yeah, you should be happy about that.
right, and I think this movie was initially intended as a, hey, not only kids, but hey, everybody, you can become bogged down by your work and not, even if it's something you love, sometimes you can become so consumed that you're a lost soul. And you need to take time to just breathe and smell the roses. And again, perfect companion piece for 2020 because 2020 took a lot of that away and forced the introspectiveness in society. And all of a sudden, here's this movie that just pairs perfectly with everything that we felt all year long.
And it's really a movie that I can't recommend enough. And we haven't gotten into spoilers about things yet, just in case, but we will later on. So, warning for anybody who hasn't seen the movie, I fully recommend watching the movie. And for that matter, I don't think you should hear the spoilers ahead of time. So, if you are thinking about watching the movie and you are the type of person who doesn't want to know what happens, then pause this, watch the movie, come back and listen to it afterward. Or just run it in the background muted, technically speaking. But the spoiler side of things, we're going to get into that and talk about how things actually go throughout the film. So again, warning, 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 warning. It's not the type of movie that you don't see where certain things are going to come. Obviously, like
Right.
It's not the most complex. Oh my god, the twist was this whole big long thing. Mind blowing type of thing. But I'll admit I got a couple things wrong about my predictions. Um, and I guess I'll start with that a little bit. So again, one more time, warning, spoilers from here on out. One of the predictions I had that I was wrong about, I was like, oh, 22 is going to be the cat. That she's going to realize that she doesn't feel normal because she's not, her soul isn't meant to be a person. It's meant to be a cat because she's being a little bit pain in the ass, and cats are a pain in the ass. And I was like, that would be like she could be the companion for Joe because Joe doesn't have a love interest in this movie or any kind of like prospects like that. Joe doesn't have like, oh, his wife passed away and they have a kid, or he's watching after the kid, or anything of like a legacy type of thing. So I was like, oh, he'll keep the cat and it'll be that kind of thing. And then I started thinking about it and I'm like, well, you know what though? The cat's a hospital cat. If he just takes the cat, then that's kind of shitty.
Right.
Then everybody else is like, oh, it's a shame that the cat didn't come see me because somebody else just decided that, they were fine enough to get out of the hospital and they took it. Like, I'm like, so that can't happen. And then I started thinking, oh, you know what? Maybe Joe's going to meet somebody and then it's going to show like, a year later or something, he's got a kid and it's 22. But then about midway through the movie, I'm like, they're not introducing a love interest. That's not going to happen. He's not going to just knock up some random person and, whatever. So I'm like, well, all right. I don't know where they're going with 22 in that regard. I guess they won't have some kind of resolution with that. And technically speaking, there isn't that sort of a resolution, but there is still a resolution because obviously at the end, 22 decides to live. And that's like, I'm cool with that. I don't need to know what happens.
I think that is one of the most interesting and unique twists that I've ever seen in a Disney movie because there is no ending for 22. You just know that she goes on to live. There's no, her purpose in this story was not to like, and a baby is born, and nope. Her purpose exists purely in the before life stage, and it's almost like, yeah, she made the decision to live, and that's all you need to know. What happens after, who they become, is not important. And that to me blew me away. I was like, my God, I was looking forward to, because like you, I'm thinking, okay, so she'll be the cat, or she'll, or Joe will have a kid, or you find out that this is all like back in time, and that she's actually the girl, from,
The one that he's teaching, like
yeah,
that she re-inspires the passion for that. Or I
yeah.
even
I'm
thought
thinking,
that there might be some kind of a scene afterward, like a post-credit scene where Joe's older and she's one of his new students. And that he just goes like, you remind me of somebody, like one of those kind of things. But I'm like, I don't need it, you know?
and I think Pixar knew, and to me, it almost became that much more beautiful because 22, who you see in the movie, she, so I don't know if you want to get into that whole thing about where the kind of the hub world for all of this takes place, but 22 isn't teachable, and she's got the greatest teachers ever.
Yeah,
And
she's got I looked up some of the trivia on this. She mentions in the movie Abraham Lincoln and Gandhi and whatever. Some of the other mentors that was on the name tags are apparently Aretha Franklin, Steve Jobs, Martin Luther King Jr., Prince, Michael Jackson,
she is.
and a Pixar director who had passed away, Joe Ranft. Ranft. Not Ranft.
That's, did wait, wasn't there a Jack Kirby in there as well?
There might have been. Yeah, I noticed Johnny Cash was the only one that I noticed. I'm sure that people
That's
had like a
great.
whole list of these kind of things.
Yeah, but 22 is completely unteachable and is perfectly content with being a drifting soul and never living, and because the whole thing is you're supposed to find your spark, and then you're supposedly ready to be born once you realize what that thing is that you want to do with your life. And right around the time that they start introducing that aspect, I just completely stopped whatever else I was doing, pure silence, focused in on the movie because that resonates with me, and I'm sure it resonates with you, where sometimes you're just like, oh, what am I doing here? And this movie hit every note perfectly.
Yeah, there's little touches in this movie that I'm sure I'm not even getting yet. And even just browsing the trivia, there's a couple things where I was just sort of like, oh yeah, you know what? I didn't even think about that. Like the character's name, 22. It says it's a reference to Catch 22 because of the whole idea that
Oh
the only
my
way to find
god.
out that life is worth living is by living life. And I'm like, I didn't even think about that, and that's amazing.
Oh my god.
Apparently, the last line in the movie was originally, I'm not sure, but I'm going to enjoy every minute of it. And they changed it to, but I'm going to live every minute of it because they realized, like, well, pain's still going to be a part of life and whatever. And you can't just be
That's
like, everything's going to be great because it's not. But,
but even that decision, that
right.
attention to detail is so important because it is saying, hey, pain is a part of the experience. It's part of the experience even when you're in the soul world. Sometimes you're lost, and that can keep you drifting aimlessly. And what another thing I liked about this, Joe, who at the start of the movie, he's a substitute teacher, and he's clearly like trying to tell these kids, "Oh man, the first time I heard jazz and it just clicked." And they're just like, "Man, we don't give a fuck."
Yeah.
Like
It comes off very much like the Simpsons thing, these kids don't know what the jazz is all about. like
it really does. And even he's like one of the only references to just direct to, We Are Black was when he's saying like I don't want to be here, when he's flashing back to the first time he heard jazz. And his father is just like, nope, you have to at least experience this. This is a part of our culture.
right.
And it clicks for him, and he's trying to get these kids to be inspired and to feel that spark, and they're just like, yeah, we're gonna play the song that you assigned us, and we're gonna make fun of this girl because she's actually into it, you fucking nerd.
Yeah. Look at you
Yeah,
playing your trombone.
you loser. And then one of the interesting touches here is he gets a knock on the door of the classroom, and it's the principal saying, hey, guess what? After all these years, you can finally be, we're finally like hiring you full
Yeah, you're gonna be
time. And
staff.
it's like, that's the moment where he goes, you know, I think I want more out of life. And at that moment, I'm like, okay, I see where this is going. He's gonna like be told no and be told no, and then he'll finally catch the spark and be able to live his moment, and that's it, happily ever after. And that is not the route that this movie takes.
See, from that moment, I was like, all right, the lesson he has to learn now is that he likes teaching better. And I was assuming that he would come full circle around to that. They didn't
See, and
really.
I don't even think that they really established that.
Right.
It's this weird movie that honestly says, like, no, 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 balance. He's gonna get to do this thing and
Yeah.
still do this thing, and realize that somewhere in the middle is where it all matters.
Yeah, he's going to take the job. I'm assuming at the very least that what they end with is he's going to take the job because it's financial stability, and he's going to see more passion in it because of that little girl.
But
But
I
he's
also
not going to
think
get
he's
himself
gonna.
bogged down too much into that because he's going to still be able to enjoy just, life. And like he might still do the stuff with Dorothy, but like even if he doesn't, he got to experience that. So because I like that metaphor that she uses of um
The ocean.
the fish swimming and wants to go to the ocean and says, "Oh, this is just water. I want to go to the ocean." Like I like that a lot. Might have to use that in some future thing.
Let's be real. That is, at least on my end, that's my life. Like,
That's true.
I I'm literally like, yeah, but I want to do more, and it's like, no, no, you're in it, you're doing it, and you're like, this isn't what I thought it would be, and you're always chasing more. You're always chasing fulfillment, and in a lot of ways, that's good. Complacency is the worst thing in any walk of life.
Yeah.
Complacency is awful.
And I love the little touch of the character that is lost, where he's just like what do they call him, like a day trader or something, I think.
Yeah, like he's just a stock manager or whatever.
He's just like make the trade, whatever. Then they give him that spark to do something else, and he's just like, everybody needs to just like fuck off, kind of thing. Like,
I'm alive, fucking
yeah.
live. It's like, yes.
I was like, I get it, that kind of thing. Like,
That's the part where it clicked for me too, because again, he likes being a day trader. That's his passion. But sometimes even that is overwhelming.
yeah, and you
And
get like you got a wide variety of some people that they show that are like really important people, like this scientist that did this crazy thing, or this like Abraham Lincoln type, where it's like, okay, that guy was a president, and then you get some people that it looks like their whole thing is that they just like kicking around a soccer ball, and other people that are like they were doing the whole idea of like, well, what about um break dancing, or what about archery? There was the one person that just the little kid shoots the arrow, and it's like, all right, that's their spark. They're just gonna like, archery's great, that kind of a thing, and it's I've never shot an arrow before. I don't know if that would happen with me. Actually, I don't
and
know if
it,
I've. Now I'm thinking about it. I shot a crossbow one time, so didn't give me a
and it,
spark.
and it's weird because it's like they really do their best to try and say, yeah, this one thing is the thing that will, define you, and like, there's so much more to life.
Yeah, that they say at the end, that's not your purpose. That's just sort of, one of those things. Like,
Like that's just your interest. I think the line is, oh, you mentors, you creatives, and your purposes. No, no, we're not teaching you your purpose. We're just kind of helping you be ready, and it clicks so well. And if you're not in the creative space, maybe this doesn't click as hard, but
yeah,
like for me and probably for you too, when you're in that creative space and you're just like, no, this is it. What the fuck? Like this is supposed to be the thing. I had a goal. It's you know what? It's very How I Met Your Mother.
yeah,
It's
it is. Maybe that's why we both like it so much.
it's very. I have the plan. I have to be an architect. That's the plan, and
What if I don't think of the books?
it's very like at the end of the day, maybe it's just a washcloth. And you know what? Even in that, Ted moves on to teaching, but you know what else? He keeps the passion and he still gets to be an architect. And it's like that here because Joe probably moves on to teaching. We don't know, but we know that he got to experience that moment. But it wasn't like the first time he tried out with Dorothea, right? Because when he tried out with her, he hit this groove and he's just like in this zone where it's all clicking and it's almost like you're just on another level. And it's great. It's a moment that we all live for. But once you have it once, you can't duplicate it again, even if it's the one thing you want. And again, the movie just does such good in, depicting this and showing that again, there's no real antagonist here. There's
Yeah, there's no villain in this movie.
villain. The villain is the complex thought of how to live a successful life.
It's existentialism is the villain of this movie.
It really is, and it's so important. And it's one of those things where, like, I am driven by, I have to do something I'm passionate about. That's very much who I am. Obviously, money overtakes that in some ways, but at the end of the day, I have to be doing something that is in line with my passion. You are very much the same way. I know you are, otherwise you wouldn't be doing half the things you do. Uh,
Yeah, and it really speaks to me when they do these kind of things, and like How I Met Your Mother, and this, where it's like the characters kind of debating about passions, and they're like, "Well, I also do teaching," and I'm like, I've got a teaching degree." Like, I'm like, no, that's what I went to college for. You're speaking to me, like,
it's funny that like our parents' generation was very, no, you have to go to school because school is the thing that will define your success. And almost like in a just shit a projection of that, we're like, yeah, but I don't want to eat. If I can't, fuck financial stability. If I'm not loving what I do, then I don't want to eat because I want to love what I do. And this movie
they have
says
that
those
line in the
words.
yeah, that direct line of though then I don't want to eat, and it's just like, yeah, I get it.
Yes. Yes.
And, like,
Uh,
his mom's passionate about her business. She's got a thing in the room where they're debating about that, where it says "sewing mends the soul."
right.
I'd
It's
caught that, and I was just like, "That's a little on the nose," but at the same time, it's like, it's good that they put it in there.
and it's one of those things where your parents always want you to do better than them, and they want to not live vicariously through you, but they want to rectify their wrongdoings by telling you to do this thing that would have ultimately led them to be whatever is more successful in their eyes. Even if you have $1 million, I'm sure that parent would say, "Yeah, fuck the money, chase your passions." Because we as humans, we're always looking for the other side. The grass is always greener, and we're always looking for that greener pasture. And again, like this movie, it was right about that point that like you're starting to fight tears because like,
Oh yeah,
yeah, like he's having the conversation through 22 because we didn't mention this. They did some Freaky Friday thing where 22 and Joe both come crashing down to earth, but Joe ends up in a cat's body while 22 ends up in Joe's body. And then it's this great thing because we all wish we could do this. Joe is watching his life from a third person perspective, and that is so important.
yeah.
That
It's one of
is
the things that none of us can ever really do, but the glimpses we get of that tend to be some of the most informative things.
right. And like they didn't dwell on this, and again, they didn't even say like, oh Joe, you're kind of an asshole, or you're kind of you know, you only care about yourself. It wasn't anything like that. But when he goes to the barber shop because he tried to cut his own hair as a cat, it's very this is the Disney part of it,
Mini
where
chainsaw.
it's like he goes to the barber shop and he sits down, and 22, because she's had the teachings of Gandhi and Abe Lincoln and all these great people in the past, just starts using this uh, reverse psychology and psychology on the people around Joe in Joe's life. Like there's one guy at the barbershop who's just like, "Oh, give it up, Joe. You're never gonna be anything." And she's just like, "Yeah, this guy's just projecting because he's insecure about his own life." And
Poor guy gets terrified later on.
and then with the barber, you know, he's talking about the spark, and 22 as Joe is just like, so what did you want to be? And he gets to talk about his own life, and by the end of it, he goes, you know, Joe, it was so nice to just talk about something other than jazz. And 22 as Joe says, why haven't we done that before? And the guy goes, well, you never asked. And it was
Right.
this subtle thing. It wasn't like, oh, okay, I'm a bad person and I need to rectify it. No, it was just like moving on with the plot. But Joe now sees from a third party perspective, okay, there's more to life than just this one thing, even though that one thing is great. Like, uh, I love wrestling, obviously. We know this. But like when I watch a music documentary and I see how music is created, I'm like, this is so cool. Or when I watch anything from like Comics Explained, I'm like, oh, this element of entertainment is just as good as wrestling. You need to take a break from that main thing.
Right.
And I think that was so important for Joe to learn. And even if everything he does in life is going to be centered around jazz, he learned that, like, there is something beyond this, and I need to find it because I'm wasting away in this one center focus, and there's a whole world out there.
Yeah, it's your obsession doesn't need to be your soul, well, soul,
Yeah.
soul as in SOLE, your sole focal point and able to be able to enjoy life. Like, you know, here's a weird analogy. Like, well, it's not really weird. I'll give myself better credit than that. One of the things I've brought up years and years and years at this point, whenever I fill out like some kind of like little survey type things or people ask me about it or whatever, I've always been a big, big fan of. You ever run into a situation where you say you're like going to a store and it's raining and you get out of the car and you run to the section of like the store where I guess it's got like some kind of a little overhang or whatever, like right in front of the door.
Yeah.
Or if you do the opposite where you're coming out of like a place and you're like, oh man, it started to rain and I never brought an umbrella. And when you finally get into the car, that relief, even though I like the rain, that relief of like that, we got out of the rain, I think is one of the most beautiful things in the world, which is really like a lot of people would be like, what? That's ridiculous. It's dumb. But I'm like, like I have these memories of that, even going back to when I was a little kid, of just feeling this like astonishment about that. And you got to have more moments like that in your life, you know? You can't
Yeah.
just force them and you can't create something out of nothing, but there's a lot of stuff happening around you that you might not pay any attention to that is really just beautiful.
So walk with me here because I think this is a really good thing about
Well,
22.
my microphone's here. If I move it, I'm going.
That's fair. Uh, 22 had all these teachings, right? And understood so much about psychology. And I think that modern society is very much like that, like where we're understanding so much about psychology and why we do the things we do and why we have these triggers and we're giving terms to this and that and this. But then 22 actually lives and eats pizza and
I love that, by the way, that's like a big wake up moment of like,
it
oh
because
my
it's
God, food's so good and pizza's amazing and bagels are good. Pizza's,
It's New York bagels and it's New York pizza
yeah,
and
pepperoni, good call.
that hits on a different level for me, but like the idea that you can have all the knowledge in the world, but after a while, like you're just you're painting yourself into these corners because you think you understand so much. Sometimes you're trying to recreate what you already know. How many times do you hear this now? Like, oh, you gotta get your serotonin levels up and you gotta release these endorphins. It's like, or or we could just try to live our lives and that's kind of what this movie does, where it's like, yeah, okay, you understand all of that from a fundamental perspective, but you haven't even tasted a lollipop.
Right.
And then you're gonna taste that lollipop and it's gonna be freaking amazing. You're gonna
Take some road lollies.
Yeah, you're gonna see a leaf fall on your nose, and it's gonna be like this moment where you're like, "Oh my God, the world is the gift." Like, and there are moments in life where you're not gonna feel it every day, and to expect that is unreasonable. But sometimes you gotta look around and just take a deep breath and go, "Holy shit, the world that we live in is actually like beautiful, and it's so important to enjoy every aspect of that, especially now as we're like bogged down in just all the wow, everything is terrible. And then you go outside and you're like, you know what? I'm kind of laughing with this guy. Maybe it's not all that bad. And I thank Pixar for giving the next generation, hopefully, this idea that like, yeah, life is good. Because a lot of the other Pixar movies that we grew up on were like, hey, it's okay to try new things, and hey, um,
People who are different might not be all that different, and you can still see eye to eye.
right,
You got a friend in me, that kind of thing. Or
right, or like sometimes like monsters don't always have to be monsters. You know, you can give kids all of that, and like Finding Nemo, which I guess is like you can always keep swimming. I guess it was the main takeaway from that. Like you can always find your way back.
listen to your dad. It's one of
Yeah,
the
kind of like
but even like Nemo's got a protective dad that needs to by the end of the movie Marlin goes from being overprotective to being like I gotta let my kid live his life. And
right. And there's all of those are great, right? But I think this generation, with everything that we know now and everything that we have now, kind of just needs to know, hey, go outside, live your life, and don't get too bogged down in what you're meant to be and who you're supposed to be, because that is something that I feel like is going to plague the next generation even harder because they have so much more stuff to decide, you know? And it's gotten even crazier, and they need that knowledge of like, let the leaf fall on your nose, take a road lolly or two, go get a slice of pizza, and enjoy the ride because it's the ride. It really is.
I loved also the variety of like they didn't really address death too much in a movie that's about death, where like you weren't seeing I mean like you see him fall down the sewer um manhole and he falls with the train and like different things like that. But it's like when he first shows up there's an older woman, I think she says she's like 90 something
She's
or
like, I've been
whatever.
waiting for this for a long time. It's like, yeah, I like
And
that.
there's a great moment which is played for laughs and I laughed and all that, but it's also really kind of great too, where he's passing by a whole bunch of different people and he's like, why aren't you going the other way or whatever, and the one goes, I don't know. And I love that because it's like it is true. Sometimes it's just sort of like I don't know, like and obviously they don't address like suicide in this, and they don't address like they could go far deeper and darker if they wanted to take it in certain different directions, but there's not a single character that they show that when they're in like their soul format they seem to be like upset. Like
Right.
there's the lost ones, which they're not really fully like souls that are lost. They're living people that are, they're in like the inspiration realm, so to speak. Um, and there's people like Moon Dragon or whatever was his name, Moonwind, I think.
Yeah.
that he's somehow able to connect with this level just because he's a hippie and he's spinning a sign, which I thought was great.
I love that. I thought that's hysterical.
He was Caroline's favorite character. Voiced by Graham Norton.
Huh.
Funny enough. I didn't catch almost any of the voices in this. Jamie Foxx was the only one that I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Jamie Foxx.
22 was Tina Fey.
Yeah, Tina Fey. Didn't know if that was her.
Didn't click with me either. You know what was funny? Is why do you sound like you're an older white woman? I don't know. Voices are weird, man.
But they go into this whole thing about that, and they could have gone into some different directions, and I'm sure if you wanted to like expand this world and do sequels and stuff, you could, but I don't think that they should. And I don't know, at the end of it, I felt like they really like this movie felt like they made it after really, really thinking about it, because it doesn't seem to have anything in the movie that it doesn't need. And for that matter, also apparently 22 was the original main character. It was going to revolve around 22, and Joe was going to be like the guide to like show her what's great about like living. Almost like It's a Wonderful Life.
Right.
But when they decided to switch it over to Joe and do that kind of a story but in a different direction, I think that came out so much better.
I would agree, because I think if we take the same story, right? Same everything, but we make it all about 22 being nervous because she has failed so many times at finding her spark. And, you know, even if it's the same thing that Joe's just like, hey, man, living is the spark, it doesn't hit as well. It's just another movie telling kids it's okay to find time. It's okay to take time to figure out who you are, which is a great moral, right? But when you're telling it as an adult male who is lost and is struggling with the everyday aspects of life, it hits so much different, and it makes it more timeless.
And this is a type of movie too that when everybody says fun for the whole family, like that kind of thing, I think that that's one of the most ridiculous things that people overuse, because most of the time fun for the whole family means it doesn't have anything that like the super church going audience is going to be upset about. You know what I mean? That's all that means. So it's like, oh, it's fun for the whole family. You're not going to find nudity, because that's apparently the most offensive thing in the world. But this type of movie speaks more to adults than kids, yet it gives enough of a set of morals and lessons to learn and everything, and connectivity, because it's like it's funny and it's cartoon and everything, that kids can get something out of it too. But Pixar, over the years, they've been getting more and more where they're like speaking to the 20 to 30 something year olds.
They're growing up with their audience.
It really is. I mean, when did Toy Story come out? Toy Story 95. Was like 95.
Yeah.
So I wasn't even 10 years old at that point. So I'm firmly in the Andy range of that, essentially. And getting into like this type of stuff, it's like, yeah, okay, well then, I'm assuming at this point Pixar is like, when I'm hit my 40s, they're going to be like, hey, so this is what it's like when you've got kids, and this is what happens with this, whatever. That's going to be like,
when you're 40, 45, they're going to do, hey, Andy got his toys back, and he's going to share it with his kids. Isn't this great?
We know that you're having a midlife crisis now, but it's okay. There's still time. And then when I'm, 70, it's going to be like, I know you're getting towards the end here, pal, but like, whatever. It's going to be like, I love it. Like, they have such good ideas for just simple things. Even like, here's a little detail that I thought was great. The hub world kind of thing. They call that the U seminar instead of like a youth seminar or whatever. And apparently in the credits, the production babies is replaced with recent U seminar graduates. It was like, that's cute.
And I love that. I think that they understand so much, right? Like they know what people are there for. They know, hey, you want to laugh, but uh you want an enjoyable movie that's going to teach you something. In some cases, for like the really diehards, you want a world that you're going to be able to like expand and write fan fiction about and create conspiracy theories and whole new universes out of. And I'll say it again, the the hub world, the beyond, is gorgeous. It's so bright, and it really looks like God. Wouldn't you want to be here if you had to pick a place to be for eternity? That's got to be pretty nice.
Well, you can't eat pizza,
That's true.
so I don't know
20,
about that.
22 couldn't even taste. That's why 22 was so miserable.
I thought it was great when she eats the pizza and just like poops right out. They don't show you what happens when you go into the great beyond,
Which I think was a very calculated decision.
right? Because they don't want to show you like it's this Judeo-Christian type of thing, or this Buddhist type of philosophy, or it's reincarnation, or they keep it as just this ethereal type of thing. And uh, when I was watching it with Caroline, she's like, "Why is it making it sound like they're flies going into a bug zapper?" And I'm like, I didn't think about that, but it's just like bzz, bzz, kind of a thing.
Jeez, only Caroline would think about that. I got like only Caroline would think about that.
When he's falling through and there's all that trippy stuff like with Interstellar, I was like, oh my god, I would be having such a mental breakdown if I were tripping on different realities and dimension kind of physics and all that. I couldn't go through the quantum realm or the trip from Interstellar or whatever and not feel like my brain was shattered. Uh, I felt like comfort in that type of environment. It's just a bridge with no handles on it leading into a bug zapper. And it
And
seemed like it was nice. Like,
and the only thing that they established in terms of actual death was the people who were at peace and were ready to go, like the ones who said, I've been waiting for this for a long time, and the other one who knows where he was in his life, but he's like, I don't know, we're like, I'm good though. And I think that's important because you're not sending any message about, oh, death, it's okay dealing with death. Death is a part of life. No, this is more about like, yeah, okay, that's a part of it, but we're going to focus on the why you need to make the most out of every day before you get to that part of it. And I guess we could talk about the one negative character, or I guess if there is a villain, it would be this guy, but he's not really a villain, and that would be like I don't know,
Terry.
would you call him would you call him an accountant? Like,
Yeah, he said he's an accountant.
yeah,
So there's the Jerrys, the Council of Jerrys, or Counselor Jerry, not council. Well, it's Council of Counselors, all named Jerry, and then there's Terry, the accountant. I guess technically he's kind of an antagonist, but not really, because he's not really doing anything wrong. The
but
numbers are off, and he's going to bring the guy back. Like he's,
even that was presented as like, all right, pal, this is your obsession. You're obsessed with order and numbers, and you need everything to be perfect because this hasn't happened in all these years. And my favorite thing was he forces them to go to an award ceremony.
Yeah, we're going to present you the trophy that you insisted on. Yeah, that was good. I liked the Jerrys too. Even the line about like, we're the ones that give out inspiration, but we're so rarely ever inspired ourselves.
Right. And it's the thing about that is you're gonna encounter Terrys in life. You're gonna encounter people who are like OCD to a point and are so like, I did everything right. Give me an award. And like, that's okay. And that's kind of another element of the movie is like, is it annoying? Sure. But you know what? It's okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
nobody like casts him aside
Right.
or goes like, "Oh God, I hate Terry so much, and I wish we could get rid of that little fucker." Like, it's just sort
But
of like, all right, let's just let's add an extra little thing on there and just play this little trick on him to where he's not upset about it anymore.
right.
Good job. You know, and it's just like, oh yeah, I got my trophy. Like, it's
This
really just like
it's so pure.
an uplifting type of thing.
It's so pure, and it's I think it's important to say that, like, hey, there doesn't always have to be a villain because we're all going through the same journey and we're all at different points of that journey, but there doesn't have to be a villain. And that to me is a huge lesson to take away from Soul.
Yeah, they could have very easily turned this into one of those things where Terry's character is like the manipulative overseer that is trying to screw over Joe and 22 and has been keeping 22 behind this whole time for some kind of a reason, or some
Or
kind
they
of a
could have
negative influence or something. And instead, it's 22 is just doing 22's job, or Terry's just doing Terry's job.
or it could have even been like when he realizes that, you know, the numbers are off, they could have turned it into like this whole I'm gonna keep you here forever. You thought
Yeah.
you could get no, no, no. Terry's just trying to do his job. Like it's again in life, and I think this is especially important after 2020. In life, there doesn't always need to be a villain,
Or a reason.
right? We're all just going through it, man.
Now, I'm the type of person that tries to find reason in things, despite the fact that I also don't believe in karma or destiny or whatever a lot of the time. So I'm very contradictory, and it's maddening. But like,
You try to find reason because you're a very logic driven person, and
right, that's
it,
what drives me crazy because I'm just like, there has to be a reason why this happened, and like, if the reason is, well, you messed up, then that's the reason. And if the reason is there is no reason, then I go, well, come on.
well,
I
it's
don't
kind of
deal with abstract, there is no possible answer type of things really, really well. I tend to like finite, at the very least, even if it's not necessarily finite, I like to have that sort of, it's open ended, but this is probably the right thing. It's like for me, Inception. Spoilers for Inception. I'm like, oh, the top falls. Like, it's kind of like, yeah, it falls because it wiggles, and it just since it wiggles, and he's got his ring on in certain scenes, and his ring off in certain scenes. Okay, the top falls, and he's it's real life, and people will be like, that's not the point, and I'm like, I don't care. It's kind of like,
see, and you don't believe in karma because once you open up that idea, that leads itself into, well, then do you believe in this? And it becomes too unexplainable, and you need that logic and that reason.
yeah, because once you start thinking of, because I, in the past couple of years, I've been very much more into the idea of maybe things do happen for a reason. Because it's just, I mean, I blame it, blame's the worst word for that. I attribute it to Caroline more than anything else because I'm like, well, out of all the things in the world that could have possibly gone differently, and she ended up coming my way, and then we ended up, now we're going to get married this year, I can say, because now it's 2021. Uh,
Yes.
the whole, like, that type of thing makes me think about other things and makes me kind of put some certain things in perspective. And then when things don't have a reason for that, I end up thinking like double about it. And when you get into that rabbit hole of trying to figure out the karma reason or the destiny transaction that happened, of like, well, why did this person have to die? Well, and they had to die because of this or whatever, that that kind of a thing. You go far back enough, and then you go, okay, so then who started the existence? And then you're like, how could there be a thing if there's nothing? And how could there be nothing if there's something? And and then the next thing you know, it's 6 o'clock and you haven't gone to
Yeah.
bed yet, and you're just sort of like, I need to take Benadryl and go to sleep. You know what I mean? Like,
And for me, I'm very much in that same boat where I I still believe in karma, but I was like a super believer in like but I did all these things right, and like, what about these people that did me wrong? At the end of the day, you do realize like everybody is struggling and going through it. So that's why in the last couple of years, like I've let go of a lot because like you learn and you grow and you can't always hold everything against people who've done you wrong because you don't know why. Like again, everybody is going through it. I know you see a lot of those cheesy things that say, well, you should be nice to everybody because everybody's fighting a battle on the inside. Here's the issue with things like that. We've bogged this down into just words, where a lot of this is just corporate speak or accepted forms of verbiage to make
It's
the
Hallmark
movie's
card
going.
bullshit.
Yeah, that's a much easier way of saying it. But when a movie like this comes along and for what, like 90 minutes or so, perfectly encapsulates why, hey, life is like that sometimes. You just gotta go, man, I'm glad that things have worked out enough to where we live in this time where I'm sitting on my couch and I'm watching this movie on Christmas in the middle of a pandemic, and things could be so much worse. But you know what? I'm watching this movie on Christmas, and I'm about to watch Wonder Woman, and I don't know at that point that it's going to be a dumpster fire. But like life is good, and sure, did this movie get me a couple times because we're all uncertain about where we are in life, and you need that reminder to live every day, and that time is fleeting. Yes, but this movie did it so well, and I would recommend that you all watch it. All of you.
Fully recommend.
I don't care if you're listening to this in 2025 on February 12th, the Tuesday. It's you watch this fucking movie.
Is that a Tuesday on
I have no clue. I
let's
don't know.
see. 2020 I'm gonna click on here. 2025. Let's get into of course I did the longest possible means that I could do that. February 12th, you said?
Yeah.
Wednesday. You're one day off.
Ah,
There's that damn leap year.
that damn leap year. You see, that's what happens when you butterfly effect, and I've gone back in time. But no, this movie was
Well,
really,
we'll compromise. We'll say if it's Tuesday the 11th, February 2025, and it's 11:50 at night, and you're getting ready to watch the movie, which you're going to start it at 11:59. That it'll start
and now it's
technically.
Wednesday the 12th.
Yeah, now it'll technically be Wednesday the 12th. Then that kind of thing. You're doing 50-50 here.
But you need to watch this movie, and you need to know that you need to enjoy life, and you need to eat bagels sometimes. And ask people about their lives. It's not always about you and where you're at. I know it's easy to vent to your friends, but sometimes you gotta go, all right, not about me. How are you today? It's very important. And maybe you haven't found your spark, or maybe you found your spark a long time ago and you're like, I don't know, man. It's not happening. It's not working out the way I thought. Things happen for a reason, as Tony and I have been saying. And look, if I'd never found Tony, wouldn't have half the shit I have. But I did, and it took a long time, but it eventually paid off. You see? Like, life works out beautifully, and part of the fun in that is not knowing and not figuring it out and just kind of taking the leap.
And you never know, too. That's another thing. Like, assuming that everything happens for a reason, and even if you look at it this way, even if there's no like grand plan, there's no pre-written story, it's not like every action you make is going to do something. Even if that's not the case, every action you and everybody else makes does change things just because it's just the math of it. Like, it's impossible not to influence things because of the fact that you are a person who is doing something at any point, even if you're sleeping or you're standing in line somewhere. Like, everything that you do influences something. And let me just use the analogy of standing in line. You could be standing in line at the bank. I don't know why you'd be going in. You could just do the ATM, but it's a different story. And the fact that you're standing in line in front of somebody means that they have to wait. And that they have to wait means that everything else on their clock gets pushed back differently. I don't know how many times I've been in a situation where, say, like, my mom will be like, oh, there was an accident, like, right on the road that I was at, like, 2 minutes before I went on there. And if I would have gotten done earlier, I would have probably been in that car. Or, like, if you run into a situation where you're like, one thing begets the next. There's the line from the movie Inc. Did you ever see the movie Inc?
I did not.
There's a really good part in that movie that says, one thing begets the next. And, if you want to change something, something's got to stop the flow. It's just, this one leads to that. This leads to that. And it's kind of an example of, somebody can drop. I think that they use it. It's been a while since I saw the movie, but it's like a character drops like their some of their groceries because they bump into somebody, and then they're like an orange rolls, and then somebody goes to pick it up, and then they bump into somebody, and then somebody else is looking that way, so then they do this, whatever, like, and then it all leads to something in the movie. But I'm not gonna spoil it. And it's the type of thing that, like, yeah, you never really know. I mean, today I ordered some burgers from Red Robin.
Very good.
And yeah, great burger. Always good. One of my favorite ones. And somebody had to deliver the burgers. So that guy, that's part of whatever happened with him. And if he wouldn't have been delivering, maybe something bad would have happened. Maybe something amazing happened because of this. Maybe on the trip over here, he realized that he really likes a house that's in the area and he buys one. Or, my parents bought this particular house in part because now I don't believe in psychics. I think that they're all kind of BS, especially because the one time I got my cards read, I was told all this information that was totally wrong. And a couple things that were totally right, which were not at all something that a psychic would need to know. Like, I'm good digressing here, but it's a funny story because why not? This psychic's like, I get the feeling you don't sleep a whole lot, and I'm like, oh, do the big fucking dark circles under my eyes tell you that?
Well, hey, they're being observant.
Like, oh, you gotta be a psychic to understand that information, huh? Like that kind of thing. But somebody had said to them that the house that they were going to buy was going to be this particular thing where it was going to have this one tree out front. This one type of a tree, and just the one tree, nothing different or whatever. And out of all the places that they were looking at, they were thinking of some other areas, and they eventually came across what was going to be a brand new development, and they had one tree out in front of like the test house type thing, and it was the same type of tree that they were talking about. So then they ended up getting this house, and so it's like, yeah, is that like a self-fulfilling prophecy sort of a thing where it's like, oh, that fits in there, so let's go with that kind of a thing? Or is that just one of those weird things that works out that way? And you never know if the one little leaf, those little helicopter leaves, are fallen for a particular reason, or if it's just kind of one of those inconsequential things. But you never know. It could just be a penny. It could just be a yellow umbrella,
And I guess for my own personal, I can share bits and pieces of this and kind of leave it at this. Sometimes what you're doing at a particular point in your life, you don't have to be the one who reaps the rewards of whatever it is. Maybe what you're doing is to benefit somebody else, like how Joe is a teacher and he's igniting the spark in others. I think that's an important level too, It's not just about my story, because we're all side characters in each other's stories, and sometimes it's your turn to play the main character, and sometimes you just have to be a really good background character, but each role is so important, and you have to embrace it, know your moment to be the main character is coming, and then know when that moment is over so you can then help somebody else get that moment. And we're getting really weird, but like, but yeah, like this, it's it's just important to know that we all play roles, and you don't always have to be in the lead in the story, but it's all going somewhere. I How I Met Your Mother again. Uh, Zoe was an awful character. I didn't like Zoe.
Yeah.
But Zoe, you know, got was married to the captain, and that inevitably led to Lily getting a job years and years and years later. It it all goes somewhere, and the important thing is to enjoy the ride. Please watch this movie.
Yeah, please watch the movie, everybody. Tell us your inspirational quotes. Hit us with one of those, the world is your stage, play the part the best you can kind of a thing, like, it's a joyful, heartwarming type of film with the right twinge of sadness to it, where it's not schmaltzy or hokey or there's a big difference between a movie like this and a show like Full House.
Right.
Like, there's not that part of the movie where they just go, "Ah, Deej, did you find out that really you shouldn't have done that?" "Yeah, I did. I figured out that that's I was being a bad friend by doing that." "Oh, okay. Well, let's run along, little scamp, and get some apple pie and run down the steps and do 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 kind of
Everywhere
thing."
you look, everywhere you go.
You're right. It's not like that kind of thing where you're just like, "Oh, come on, you learned this lesson 6 episodes ago," that kind of thing or something. But like, this just hits.
And it's
Like,
not even the kind of sad, like, "Hey, go watch the first 10 minutes of Op." We're not gonna
oh
show you.
no.
It's just
But you should watch the first 10 minutes of Up.
you should. You
And then
should.
just skip the rest of the movie. The rest of the movie's not as good.
Yeah, you'll cry, but it's a good cry. It's not like that. It's this anomaly of a movie that I hope never is touched in any way,
Oh, I don't want any sequels or anything.
because this is the perfect movie. There's no villain. There's no uh, there's no heart soul crushing moment. There's no cheesy and everybody lives happily ever. No, it's just a beautiful movie about life.
I think that this is kind of a better version of Inside Out in some ways.
It's a different version of Inside Out. And I guarantee you right now, if I look at it in the Pixar theory, they'll say that 22 ends up being the girl from Inside Out.
It
I,
might be, yeah.
I
She's
bet
supposed to be the 22nd soul that was ever created, so there might be some time stuff going on. I don't know.
I bet you anything in the world. I need to look that up now. That's gonna be that's a rabbit hole for another day. But it's Inside Out was more about helping parents kind of deal with the fact that your little scamp isn't your little scamp anymore, and you helping kids go, hey, look, you can still like hockey and also find out that you like boys, you know?
It's like it's dealing with depression, it's dealing with identity issues. There's a whole lot of theories about that
It,
she might be like bisexual or something too.
it's also dealing with the fact that, which is an underrated thing, and all kids go through it, but like moving sucks, and realizing that like these people that are your worlds won't be there anymore, and you'll just completely lose touch, is a real thing to deal with. And it that is something that that movie covers beautifully. This movie is so rooted toward the adult. Like, I'll be honest, I don't know if 10-year-old Johnny is getting anything out of this. I hope that they get the idea that
Oh,
it's okay.
Johnny's an idiot.
Jeez.
There's some 10-year-old named Johnny listening to this podcast in the future just going,
What the
hey,
fuck?
hi, I didn't do anything wrong.
But like I think, as we said, Pixar is growing up with their audience. And right now there's a lot of people in that like late 80s, early 90s born period where they're just like, I don't know, man. I'm feeling a little lost.
I mean, they
Things
even made the
aren't defined.
character practically middle-aged, if not just to
Yes,
be able to do that. Like,
because I think it's important to say, like, feel a little lost. I don't feel the passion that I once had. I know I'm not ready to lay down and die yet, but where do I fit in? And that's not a story that's often told, especially not in this animation medium. And it's just so good. Like, I'm telling you, man, this movie is out there. It's like Toy Story 1, 2, and 3. If you merge them all together as one movie, it's that. Uh, some people like Finding Nemo. I'm not crazy about it. I'd throw this up there in like top 3, honestly. Pixar movies.
let me bring up my Letterboxd and see how I ranked certain things, because in my mind, Toy Story is my favorite, and it's probably just always going to be my favorite just because it's so good. But let me see about it, because like I would rank this around the same range, but better than Wall-E. Like,
Oh, this is much better than Wall-E to me.
let me see where I put on this kind of thing. Actually, I don't know if I have the ability to put that up on there. Huh. It's not letting me see my ratings. So, oh, I gotta go through it this way. So, it seems like actually, you know what? I don't know why I've never seen some of these. So, just for context, I've never seen Coco. I've never
Oh my!
seen the Cars movies, and I've never seen Brave or Airplanes or
All right, I'm gonna stop you right there. You need to watch Coco immediately. I haven't seen Brave either. Cars 1 is good. Cars 3 is good. You can skip Cars 2. We don't talk about it.
I've never seen Monsters University. That's the other one.
That's a good one. It's not as good as Monsters Inc. obviously, but it's still a good movie. Um, I've never seen Brave, which I keep meaning to. Onward was okay. Incredibles was good. Incredibles 2 was good, but not so much, you know. Um, Good Dinosaur I thought was really good. Inside Out I had a lot of fun with. But like this, I almost, now that I'm looking at the list of movies that I have seen from them, yeah, this is right up there with Toy Story for me. In
Yeah,
terms of like,
the more that I'm looking at this list, I'm like, the low range for me on Pixar is Good Dinosaur, Bugs Life, Onward.
I love A Bug's Life.
Then I get a little bit higher up with like well, Up is a weird thing because that the first opening of Up is amazing, and then the rest of the movie is actually probably my least favorite. Um, but then there's like Ratatouille, Monsters Inc., that kind of range. A little bit above that is Incredibles and like
Incredibles is really good.
Wall-E, Finding Nemo. Top range is definitely Toy Story 1, 2, and 3. And
And
uh,
I gotta throw this in there.
I gotta put Soul, if it's not on par with Toy Story 1, 2, and 3, it's the level right directly underneath it.
I
I
would
don't know if
put
I would, if it doesn't, like, it doesn't have the same rewatch value as Toy Story does to me, but it's deeper. So you sacrifice a little bit of rewatch value for more depth. And then it becomes the difference of, I always, what's my favorite movie of all time and what do I think is the best movie of all time? There's two different things.
I would throw Toy Story in the favorite category, but
Soul might be their best
Soul might
one.
be their best.
Yeah,
It
it's
really
really
might.
good.
Like
And
if
it's it could have been a lot of things that it wasn't. It could have been hokey. It could have been preachy.
It's very easy to be either of those things. You change a couple of bits around, you put the focus on 22 instead of Joe, and you could get a very hokey movie where it's like, oh, you found your spark, and your spark is actually, being yourself. And it's just like, no, you don't get it. The spark is the everlasting chase. Fucking watch the movie. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like, it's so good. It's so good. Honestly, if you like Toy Story 3, it's as warming to the soul as Toy Story 3 with like a one-shot deal where you don't need to know the history of the characters.
Yeah. It just goes directly to you.
Yeah.
Definitely gets my my seal of approval, 100%. It's something that I've retroactively said is the best movie of 2020 that I've seen.
Yep.
Because it's just that good. Like, it's just so good. Like, I'm really surprised by how much I enjoyed the movie. Then again, I shouldn't be, because it's Pixar, so like we were saying before, like, it's not like they do bad work.
They never do bad work, but even looking at this list, it's like, wow, this is right up there, if not at the tippy top. I loved it. Go watch it.
2 thumbs up for me for sure. If I were to do the whole hits and misses thing I used to do with the review points, I can't think of misses really. I don't think that there's a part of this movie I didn't like.
If I was gonna nitpick, I would say maybe a little bit too much time with the Freaky Friday stuff with the cat, but even that, like, I can forgive.
Yeah, maybe like if I needed to find something about that.
Yeah, like if I'm writing an article and I have to say, well, what was wrong here?
It's really stupid. If I were to nitpick something like that, I might go, I like dogs better. It should have been a dog.
Yeah, it's something that insignificant.
But then it's like, that's stupid, because it's like, well, that doesn't matter. It doesn't serve a different purpose of the whole thing. Cats in hospitals are a thing, whatever. So it's like, I that's not even a nitpick that makes any sense. So yeah, it's just a good movie that was well made, from the animation to the music behind it to the themes and even the voice acting. Like, they could have gone with bigger names. They could have gone with, more bombastic type of characters, but they didn't need to. And
I think we got enough of that with Onward. Even though I said in the past, we might have even done a review point on that, I loved the choice of Chris Pratt and Tom Holland, but I think they did enough of that there.
And they did it with Inside Out. They did it with. They typically do. Oh, I really liked, by the way, John Ratzenberger did have a cameo in this. He was the guy on the train. So they got him in another one of them. He's the good look charm. So I just thumbs up. I don't know what else really to say. I think that kind of sums it all up, right?
Yeah. Thank you for indulging us on this journey through
some existential stuff,
through ourselves, and through like actually one more thing, because I watched this on Christmas and Brody Lee died the next day, and even that kind of hits you harder, because you then realize, wow, this guy like embodied the spark of living life, and all these things come together to create just a beautiful experience. And watch the movie.
If we didn't spoil it enough already for you guys, if we did, sorry, I told you about the warnings. And if we, if it doesn't matter, then you watch it anyway too. But yeah, definitely watch the movie if you're on the fence. Even if we told you everything about it, just watch it anyway. If you're on the fence,
because it'll hit you differently. We don't know where you are in your life, and maybe it's gonna hit you differently. And maybe that's what you need right now, because like it's just a great movie, and I hope to see more movies like it, and yet never another one like it.
Out of all the movies I've seen in 2020, this is the one movie I'd recommend the most, for
And
sure.
that's high praise coming from a man who loves his movies.
Do love my movies. Do want to see so many more this year. Different story for another day. But yeah, if you did watch the movie, drop a comment below. Try not to go too deep into spoilers just in case anybody clicks on here too fast. But yeah, or at least give like a spoiler warning or something. And tell us your thoughts. Tell us what you liked. Tell us if it got you to cry. It got me very close. Very close.
I came close right about when like I'm thinking, oh shit, is he just gonna die? Like, is he just gonna let himself like go away?
The part
Very close.
where he's playing the piano and he's just thinking about all the inspirational stuff in his life. Like the thing that really got me, I'm wrapping up the podcast talking about a whole nother point here, but that whole thing was really, really beautiful. I'm gonna have to check that out again. But I guess maybe the implication might not be even true, but I thought they were implying he's playing the piano with his dad, and then they have him on the beach, and they're like, it's like him and his mom, and they're looking out into the ocean. I'm like, oh, they're spreading the ashes.
Ah, yeah, I didn't even.
I don't know if
Mm.
that's what they were going for. That's how I interpreted it, but I was just like, man, I'm gonna cry. Like, if I wouldn't have been watching it with Caroline, I probably would have cried. But
Man,
I do the whole thing where I fight back on all that. I've only cried at 4 movies ever in my entire life. Um,
yeah. I mean, like you, if you're not ashamed to cry, you will cry. If you're like us, where you're trying to like
you're
do
just like,
everything you can to stop it,
yeah,
you might let one tear fall out, but you know what? It's okay.
yeah. So great movie. And yeah, if you've been following everything that's happening here, you'll know that at some point when the next thing happens, we'll do another review point. I don't know what that'll be, when it'll
It'll
be.
be
I'm
it'll be in
assuming
about 2 weeks when we do Batman Soul of the Dragon. We're
probably
doing Batman
that.
Soul of the Dragon.
And then after that, most likely something about WandaVision, because that's coming out
Same week.
January 15th.
Same week.
So those two at the very least should be coming up in January. As I mentioned before, I did my 6 flicks picks for the year, at least as far as what's currently announced. So check that out if you're interested in that. If you want to go back and check out the Fanboys Film Awards, where I talked about the other movies that I had seen in 2020, that's up on the website as well. Obviously, if you want more content from Fanboys, I want to give you more content. That's one of my sparks. So the best way to make sure that that happens is to show your support in whatever way you can, whether that's just hitting the like button or letting somebody know about Fanboys in case they might want to check it out, or it's a donation through the Patreon, or it's something through the merchandise shops or whatever. That is all awesome. It makes you an awesome person too, because you're helping somebody do something that they like. And if you are into the wrestling side of things and you want to check out what we've got going on there, you probably know by now because probably you came over from the wrestling stuff. But just in case you haven't, smartoutmoment.com. That is where you'll find all the different stuff that we work on as far as my stuff, but we also do work elsewhere. I'm part of eWrestling News and Bleacher Report, and Rob's got his stuff over at Fightful and WrestleZone, and you can follow him
Yeah.
all over the place and what he's got going on too.
Yeah, it's wrestling for me is where I really start to jazz. That's where I get my jazzing going. So you can check me out on Fightful.com as well as WrestleZone.com. I do the Wednesday Night War podcast every Wednesday with Sean Ross Sapp and Alex Pulowski. Come say hi, come talk pro wrestling. I would love to do more of this because I just love pop culture in general, and Fanboys Anonymous allows for that blanket of discussion. And I hope we get to do more of these in the future.
Same here, everybody. And I hope that you enjoyed this podcast. Hope you enjoyed the movie as well. And we will talk to you next time. But for now, it's time for us to geek out. Adios.